Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast, where we explore why IT matters and matters pertaining to IT.
Welcome to the IT Matters Podcast. Aaron, how are you feeling today?
Doing great, Keith. I'm living the dream. Excited for our guests today. I think we've got a great set of topics we have not covered before. In my personal life, and I guess in my interests this week, I'm waiting to see if they found a real alien. The Mexican Congress reviewed what some people are saying is a fake alien. Some people are saying it's remains from 2,000 years ago. I saw someone post that it's actually just a cake underneath everything. So will there be aliens on Earth? It remains to be seen. Wonder what technology the aliens are using these days. That's what's new with me. How about you, Keith?
I haven't discovered any aliens yet, but this story is certainly picking up steam. I think our Congress actually is passing some legislation around this, which is very interesting because it's not just the individuals that have ideas about what they think is going on, but the U.S. Congress is discussing it, which is a little more intriguing, and I'm excited to have my first alien relationship. So I'm excited about that.
We will see.
But let's shift gears here. Today, we have the pleasure of speaking with Matt Huffman, who hails from Milwaukee, Wisconsin, the land of the finest cheddar. If you're from England, close your ears. But the Milwaukee, Wisconsin is also known for its brilliant technological ingenuity. Matt spends his professional time saving the day, serving as the IT manager for Matt. Actually, help me with the pronunciation here. Reinders,
Reinders,
yes. Inc. One of the Midwest's largest full service distributors of products for the commercial green industry. He previously gained auditing experience with the La Macchia Group and has extensive experience preparing SOC 1, SOC 2 audits, Type 1 and 2. And we're spending a lot of time today talking about tips and tricks to dramatically reduce the time invested in what is sometimes a painstaking process and come up with a successful result. So, Matt, welcome to the podcast.
Thanks. Thank you for having me.
Before we begin, after a thorough review of the Reinders Inc. LinkedIn page, I am ready to submit my name to participate in your lawnmower race that's advertised on the company profile. Are you looking for fresh blood?
Yeah, that one you'd have to talk to the marketing people because that's new to me. We have so much going on here. I've been here about 6 months. We're currently in the middle of an ERP, ISM, and CSD rollout. Oh, and a new website all this week. So busy.
And you're here with us. We really appreciate that.
Yeah, no worries.
Yeah, we certainly do. All right, well, we'll table the lawnmower race for now. But if an opening does open up, I'm willing to travel. And I have most of my experience in my adult years have to do with a push mower, but I can revert back to the riding lawnmower from when I lived in a small town a long time ago.
Yeah, we'll have to do it soon because it'll be snowblower races pretty soon here.
Yeah, that's right. So, Matt, can you tell us, share with the audience a little bit about your background, history, how you came about being a sensei when it comes to reducing the time that spent on audits and coming out with a successful result?
Yeah. I was brought on board at a prior organization who was prompted to look into getting a SOC 2 by a potential customer. And they looked internally and did not see that they had all the answers for that. And they were using MSPs. So they thought we need to bring someone in. I had no experience and they just thought we're bringing in our own guy, our sysadmin. He will work with the facilitator of the audit and, get it done for us. And they gave me, about 6 months, a lot of leeway for that. And the auditors were were very good. They had a lot of stuff in place. I did have a consultant that I was using as well. So that first year I got it done. The audit took about 8 to 10 hours, and they taught me a lot, learned a lot, and they kind of just said like, kudos to me for picking it up and everything like that. The customer was no longer interested. They ended up using us anyways. They didn't really, they were forward thinking, but it didn't matter to them. They just brought it up as maybe a discussion point. But the organization thought, hey, we're dealing with a lot of financials. Let's keep this going. So with that, knowing that I was going to have to do this again, I started looking at a lot of the stuff that I had to do, and the type of audit that we were going through was just a point in time audit. So they come in, and it's the type 2 where they just come in, and SOC 2 type 1 where they come in and it's like, this is on this day, everything was X, Y, and Z. Whereas the type 2 is they give you a period of time, and all your examples and all your samples all have to be within that period and work. So knowing that I had to keep everything going, I started putting things out there as far as, reminders, upgrading documentation, always looking at policies and procedures. And the auditors were very good about allowing me to stay in touch with them and ask them questions. When the new things were changing, they were letting me know so I could kind of get ahead of some of that. And then over the years, really it's set it and forget it. You start doing this stuff and it becomes just sort of part of your job. You're building the documents. Some of my first policies were very crude and rudimentary. They might have been 2 or 3 bullet points, but over the years you start learning to build, and you find another document and I could use this for this. And you start to, intermingle some of the wording, and you poach from different things that you see online. It's a lot easier nowadays with ChatGPT. I've just started using that for other smaller things, using it as a tool and less of an out of the box solution, which I think it has its place for things like that. But yeah, I ended up doing those audits for almost a decade and passing them and getting them down to only a couple hours. The auditors were very happy when they saw our company come up to do, because they knew it was going to be an easy, fast job and that I'd have everything. Eventually, I parlayed that into a job as an auditor, and I saw how difficult and how bad a lot of clients were. And especially with, it was hard for me to go to an organization and see that they had an IT team of 10 to 12 and they could not get me everything I needed, where I knew like, hey, I've done this. I could do this. But eventually, the love of IT and problem solving and turning an organization around brought me back to the field and to Reinders.
Matt, Matt shared with us before we actually jumped on, we're recording, that he listens to podcasts at 1.7x. So I sense efficiency in your life and the ability to condense down, which is great. I was also previously an IT auditor way back in the day at Big Four. And I did some SOC 1, SOC 2s. I was doing some of the SOCs work with, post Enron. And auditors have for years gotten a bad rap. And there's a lot of reasons why. What do you think makes a good auditor?
One of the things that kind of surprised me when I went was not a lot of the auditors for IT have a full IT tech background. And that kind of threw me off when I would talk to these guys, and they have CISA, they've gone through something like that, or, they might have a Net Plus or an A Plus if you're lucky, but they have no tech background, no working, ins and outs of the actual, organizational environment and, the day-to-day stuff. So that really threw me off. And it surprised me because I would see guys doing things and be like, well, they could just do this or this and get away with it with this or that and, find ins and outs. And that surprised me the most, seeing that they weren't really full on IT people, where the organization would reserve those kind of people for their pen testing or for, their MSP services. So that really threw me off from that. The amount of searching and documentation and just the leeway that they give people, that was, to me, like you said, I'm very efficient. So I'm just like, what are we doing here? Let's go.
Yeah. And I can empathize with you or sympathize, whatever the whatever the correct word is for the customer, but I remember asking for, I think we call them PVC lists or request lists. Like, here's the number of things I need. And you knew on day one, how bad was that going to be? Because it was like, oh yeah, 4 weeks we'll have this to you. It's like 4 weeks.
Yeah, and you're booked with another client. Yeah, in that next 4 weeks. And you might have 2 weeks where you are just waiting. And then now this next week, here's a big job and they're ready. But now so is the other client. And you're just like, oh, now you're extra swamped. And yeah, that kind of stuff, not my forte. I like being busy in a good way. Having 80 hours of work of just searching documentation was not fun.
But would you agree? So you kind of said before that last statement, you talked about being prepared, the documentation, having things ready. I think a lot of people associate that with audits, but wouldn't you agree that's kind of part of being a good in an organization that documents and has great process and control? Like, that's part of what makes the audit easier, is if you're organized and you document and you retain documents correctly, that makes audits easier. But I think people view audits as like, oh, I can get prepared and do all this stuff. You shouldn't have to if you're organized.
No, I mean, it's when you're doing this audit, in the end, you're going to upload everything to a single folder. And, that's going to be all your evidence. You could copy that folder and make reminders on every piece of evidence that you provided, whether it's, hey, this is a screenshot of an application. I just got to make sure this application runs weekly. I get this report daily. I create a work order or a change management. I get this approved through this person. I get that approved through that person. And it's really just, once you get it going, it runs itself, but you have to recognize that and want to keep doing that. Like you said, I mean, it's not difficult. No audit is difficult. The auditor doesn't want to fail you. They're there to work with you. When you talk to these auditors and you go over your controls, that's one of the things that I learned, through, a few years in, is the controls really are, you can mold those and manipulate those to fit your, maybe you don't want to go so tight on the screws for security. As long as you're able to mitigate and, have those risk appetites and things, you can loosen up a little bit and still meet the control. But a lot of people, when they see that, might get frightened and think, oh, I've got to have X, Y, and Z. Like, well, no, you can have X and Z, and you just, you mitigate Y with this, and you just have to document it and show that.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. I want one other question on just like auditing in general and like where we're at in 2023. And my experience may be different, but I did a lot of the organizational level monitoring or auditing and general controls auditing. I know cybersecurity auditing is a totally different beast, but like with all of the requirements now for continuous monitoring, logging, active remediation and review, do you think that some portions of audits are really not as valid anymore as they used to be because we have so much real-time monitoring? Or do you still think that like some of that like log review controls and signing off on things, do you still think that that's valid in 2023?
Yes and no. I mean, there's always going to be low-hanging fruit, and you want to give the client, more bang for the buck. So you want to keep that in, because if you really streamlined it, I think you would lose some of that. And then there's also, you never know what is going to be the attack vector. You want to be able to have that insight. You want to be able to have those policies, those procedures, because you don't know what tactics are going to be used against you. So the more visibility into environment is not going to be, I don't ever find that being something that's going to be a negative. The one thing that I would say is that there are a lot of IT people out there who will stay in an environment where they're not getting, the nourishment they need, and they're okay with that. And to me, that's I don't understand that. I put value on what I do and what I bring, and, it may not be here and it may not be there, but it's going to be somewhere. And, I'm always investing in myself. And, we talked about those efficiencies. I was at a spot where I feel like I could have coasted. I had it, like I said, running autopilot, and, that could have been the end for me, but it wasn't. I wasn't ready for that. and here I am taking on a new challenge where I've got a place that is in a spot that needs a lot of help. And my goal is to get us audit ready. So if we ever did have any kind of audit, we're ready to go.
Matt, what are some of the challenges that organizations face in preparing for a SOC 1 or SOC 1 Type 2, SOC 2 audit? What are some of the basics of
I think it's like Aaron alluded to, it's that fear of an audit. I think you get caught up in those headlights and you start thinking, how am I going to do this? What am I going to do? And we've all been there, whether it be, a school assignment or a project. It just seems so daunting and huge. And when you just decide to nibble around the edges, it takes forever. Whereas, hey, I'm just going to go right up the middle with this thing. And sometimes it's like, oh, that was nothing. It's literally, it's like, oh, we've got to get this giant security policy. Well, not really. Start it small. Your auditor is going to be able to, you're going to have some time to send that to them and say, here's this. And they're going to give you some feedback and let you know what it's missing. And, it's like anything. You take that feedback and you make the adjustments. And I think it's about tackling it. There's, like I said, some of these IT people, I've been on audits where I've asked them about, two-factor. Well, we don't have that turned on. Well, why not? Well, they haven't sent me out for training for that. You don't need to train for that. It's pretty simple to set that up and turn it on. And it comes down to, I think there's still a lot of old school mentality out there with IT as well. A lot of keeping things to ourselves, things are siloed. So there's a big change coming, and, people are going to fall by the wayside and other people are going to either grow and learn, and some are just going to take off. So I think the fear is the biggest thing for the audits, the fear and the fear of the unknown. And like I said, it's really not unknown. It's starting small and it grows. You just keep going.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Have you noticed any technology trends in cybersecurity that can help organizations prepare and pass cybersecurity audits?
Yeah, there are some systems out there, software. I want to say, I took notes on a lot of these and I don't have them with me at the moment. Like ServiceNow will offer a lot of reports. You can get things out of, if you have enough visibility, you could use Landsweeper, you could use Netrix. You can get reports out of anything. And as long as you've got them fleshed right and configured to monitor what you need, send who needs to approve them, who needs to do what, you're creating and documenting, tracking work orders is huge. Having those, security incident categories, change management categories, having, if you are a solo IT person, don't make all the decisions, send that off to, the CEO or the CIO to make that final decision. Because then it shows, there's a process, and it can just be documented, when XYZ happens, it goes through me and then it goes to this person for approval. And it's as small as that sometimes. You don't need a board and you don't need, meetings every month and people to go through certain things. It can, again, this is that flexibility in the controls where you can make some of that happen yourself.
Yeah, I love it. I just wish more people had this view because, we don't get audited now, but we work with a lot of customers and companies that are going through audits, and the ones that view it as, like I said, a burden earlier, they don't understand the purpose. And so what's interesting is like what you're basically talking about. It's just good IT and honestly business practices of document, prepare, plan, remediate, work on fixing things. Like that's just the whole point of an audit is just to check in at a point in time and say, where are we? Right. So I love what you're saying. I've seen more recently, and I'm curious your thoughts on this trend. We're seeing a lot of, especially in the cybersecurity auditing space, which, for those of you who have not gone through it, the listeners out there, a lot of this is being driven from insurance at this point, cyber insurance questionnaires, maybe audits. We're seeing, at least in some subsets of customers, using cybersecurity audits as a jump off point, basically to ask for better processes, more investment in certain things, And I think what we see is a lot of, you mentioned, I forget if it was pre-recording or after we turned on recording, but you were working with a kind of turning around IT and making it better. In that situation, one of the easiest ways to do that is show a bad audit, show a bad result, and say, hey, here's what we need to do that. And I'm curious, like what you think of that using an audit as that jumping off point, and then where do you go from there when you do go to try to turn around and make things better?
Yeah, I think from the cybersecurity insurance, that too, a lot of people don't realize that the insurance companies, they really don't know what they're doing as well. They're throwing a bunch of things on paper, and when it comes down to it and you have to call that in, that is when they're going to actually do their due diligence and look for something that you might be out of the loop on, that you didn't know, that's not on that paper. And really, really going back to them, asking them the questions, to me, those are also controls. When we got that cyber insurance paperwork, I sent that back. I had questions. I had, what are you doing for this? What are you covering for that? What are you asking by with this question? But using that, if you aren't part of an organization that is doing an audit, use that cyber insurance document as your audit. Use that. Come back to the organization and be like, look, they're saying this, which doesn't cover that. You might have an organization that decides, hey, we're selling widget ABC here. We want to throw in this little other tool that has nothing to do with the organization, but we think companies will like it. But that company and that division is run by, a family member, and it's not following any of the rules, and that you want to make sure you have that locked in. If you're going to say like, look, none of that is covered under our audit, and that is wide open. They're running their own devices. They're doing their own stuff. Like, you have to be able to recognize that. And, like you said, utilize that cyber insurance to say like, look, we want to get this in place. We want to put these in place. We want to start building policies, procedures, software, security. I think that is a good jump off. And even, one of the things that I would do too is my CIO at the time, not CIO, I have a CIO here, but the CEO and the COO, I would send them notifications every week of, hey, look who got breached. Look who got breached. And it didn't have to be big breaches. It was little breaches, because a lot of times you'll get that mentality from the C-levels and the execs of like, well, we're only a $30 million company. Why would they come after us? Well, they're not coming after a $30 million company. They went to an IP range or a scope of IPs, and they found what they could get, what was vulnerable. And a lot of times you could be a pivot point. And I had to explain to them, like, maybe they don't come to us, but we are a pivot point to all our clients who are larger than us. So they need to see some things like that sometimes.
The number of stories out there around what you just said is incredible. We're not big enough. For anyone listening, that is a completely invalid statement in 2023, and probably will be forever from now on, because of AI and all the different reasons. Like, people aren't targeting like a certain size company. They're targeting whatever's out there, and they're targeting it because it's just part of like you said, it's a block of IPs, or it's something easy. One of our favorite topics on this podcast, with just all of our guests, is the theme around AI. You mentioned it earlier, like writing policies with ChatGPT or Bard. How should people consider using AI for policies? What are some other ideas people can use AI for is helping them with audits?
Yeah, definitely. It's funny, is I recently, probably in the last 5 months, have turned around on AI. I was very proud of all my documentation that I created. I won an award at school for a paper that I wrote because of it. They turn it into a system that will scan it for any kind of plagiarism, and you're allowed 10 to 30% based on citing and everything. I had a 0.0, so I was just like, oh, this is either going to flame out or it's going to be great, and it was good. So I was very proud of it. I put a lot of work in. But then, I got to a position like this again, and I'm just like, what were these emails? You wish you could go back and find your old stuff, because you're like, oh, I spent so much time on it and I worded it, and so you make a rough draft, and then it wasn't cutting it, and I'm just like, well, all right, let me give it a go. So I started throwing things into ChatGPT, and, whether it be an email telling everybody, hey, this is how we're going to start doing our phishing training, or, a small mobile device policy. You want to start, you can finagle, it's awesome what you can do. You can say, hey, less words, more words, put in 3 bullet points, take out 5, and it really is a good tool. But what I do, I haven't gone where it comes right out of the box. I will create what I want, throw it in there, have it zhuzh it up, and then I'll clean it up. And then, I have the final oversight on it. So I think people need to use it like that. I think that's going to be the best way. I do see people using it for coding. I have not done any of that yet. For auditing, it's definitely good to, like I said, the policies, the procedures. I guess I really would have to look more to see what else I could do with it. I don't know if it does reminders for you. If you want to have ChatGPT create some kind of scheduling, you could have it do something like that. Maybe put in your team, their skill set, and see if it can do any kind of assigning. That would be a good way to test it out as well.
What you mentioned that you had tested it out with some of the against some of the policies and procedures that you came up with. What did you notice that ChatGPT produced compared to what your methodology had arose to?
Sometimes it adds a few things. It's a little more thorough. It could be too thorough, too in-depth, too many steps. It will do that high. One of the things that I kind of like from being an IT manager and what I've done throughout my career is I feel like I remember what I didn't grow up in computers. This is like my 3rd career. I've been in it for about 15, 17 years now, and I remember my first laptop I had for school. I was in school for firefighting, and I've had that thing in a sleeve, inside another sleeve, and a backpack. Like, it was my first computer. I was, didn't know what to do with it. I treated it with, like gold. And, a year later, I'm pulling it apart and doing everything I can. So I still remember how I felt. And I remember, looking at a computer, not knowing what to do. So I try to break things down for my users, and I try not to get too far above their heads. And I want them to feel comfortable with technology. So that's one thing I've always done. And one thing that ChatGPT does is it doesn't know how to do that. So I do know how to myself tone it down and kind of put it in, take out some of the, the buzzwords it likes to use and things like that, or any, like I said, when it gets too far down any lane.
But to your point, I think this isn't a question, this is just a statement. When Keith and I interview a lot of customers about specific problems, broad, we talk to CFOs, CTOs, CIOs, all the way down to a system admin. Something that at this day and age, like, to me, it's like, I hear people and they're like, well, we don't have a policy for that. At a minimum, just put something into ChatGPT, write a policy, even if it's not the best, like you've got a lot of experience, put something in place so that you have it and you can at least go back and say, like, I have this, like
my framework. Yeah.
It's crazy. You can ask, like you said, you can ask it to say, map to blank control and write a policy and just reference it and check it. But like, it's going to do it for you.
You could, there is, I don't know if people know how to use it well enough, but like, you can tell it out the gate, like, hey, here's who I am. Here's my views on things. It's going to ask you a couple things. You could load that in ahead of time. So it starts to try to learn as you talk. But yeah, literally, you could say, I need an MDM policy for 50 cell phones on Verizon. I would like to keep the users to using our devices. If they're going to use email on their own devices, we are going to lock it down. And you could just say what you want to say to it, and it will put it where you want to go. It'll take you to that policy. It'll create it. And then, obviously you'll read it over, and you could even just write after you see it, less words, more bullet points, friendlier, sterner, you could do things like that, and it's going to keep spitting it out till you get what you want. You're like, I don't like that line. I don't like that line, but everything else is gold.
I know I'm using ChatGPT on how to better communicate with my kid. No, I'm just kidding. I'm not. But
I coach my daughter's softball, and I had it put together a practice schedule for us.
Smart.
I said, I need, give me 20 minutes of conditioning, give me 20 minutes of fielding. And I knew I wanted to do a scrimmage, and give me, 20 minutes of this. And then, it set everything up. It gave me the times, it broke it down, and I knew, all right, we're good. This is what we're going to use.
Yeah, that's awesome. Keith, I know you probably have a question real quick. I want to transition back a second away from the AI conversation, because we have this a lot, and you have a lot of kind of interesting experience. Shifting back, you're an IT manager, and you're doing, you're trying to help create better policies, procedures, make sure controls are in place for IT, have efficient systems. What has made you? How has an IT auditor, that experience and dealing with audits, made you a better IT manager, one? And then two, for those students that are in college, because IT audit has always been something where there's a lot of jobs typically coming out of college. Like, would you still recommend students go to that? Is that a good career path to get where you're at? Just kind of share your thoughts on what makes you better at your jobs from your experience.
Yeah, one of the things, it definitely reaffirmed my love of IT, and it did show me that, hey, I am that dude. I'm the guy that goes, and I keep going. I don't settle. I'm always going forward. And, a year of auditing, say 100 different companies and IT departments, you don't see a lot of people like yourself, and then, like I said, you see some of those issues where you're like, man, you could just do this, or you need to do that, or you just tell them, you guys got to do this, and you're seeing all these holes and no one's doing anything about it. And you realize there's a lot of bad IT out there, and, this isn't what I want to see. I don't want to be in this negativity. So it definitely reaffirmed my love. It made me realize that, like, hey, I like making changes. I like getting problems. I can be hands-on. I don't want to see a problem and just give someone an answer and that's it. I'm out the door. I want to be a part of that. I want to see it to the finish. As far as new people coming out of school, it really depends. If you're in IT, I would not want to be in that, because you're not going to get the full IT experience. As you're moving your way up in your career and you need a stopping point, probably mid-level, it would be nice. But then, I don't know. I think it takes a real special person to want to sit. The best part of it was only about 5-10% where you're really involved. There's so much documentation and so much, the interviewings, when you're interviewing other IT people, it's good to talk to them, to meet people. I can do all that all day. But there is a solid chunk where you are alone with a document, looking through controls, and you're looking through this and you're looking at that. Does this meet this? Does this? And then finding the evidence and then waiting for it or requesting it. And there's a lot of follow up there and a lot of stuff. If that's your forte, jump in, feet first, head first, whatever you want to do. But if you're new and you want to be in this and you have that inquisitive mindset and you're, that IT tech, detective and you want to fix things and you're a people pleaser, and like, I've never been the IT guy where it's like, a user is like, no, these are my people. Like, I'm here to make them better. My goal is for everyone who ever leaves here to go, that was the best IT department I ever worked with, So that's always my goal. So if that's you, then, probably not jump in there, but don't be afraid of it too.
What do you guys hire graduate students from universities at your organization? Have you had experience with that?
I did have a little turnaround here, a change of culture coming in. I did have one person right now who is still in school, and helping him and mentoring him has been rock steady. And actually, I've got a new guy starting today as well. And I've had a new one start last week. So my team is now set. I've got people who have that same mentality and buy-in as myself. And we're ready to just, I was done pulling this. Now I'm ready to just run with this with everybody else. So I look at it as any level. If you're into it, like, I'm going to be into it too. Like, I run a local IT group. I'm always looking to mentor people and help people. And I think that was big for me early in my career. And I want to keep helping that because, it's, read it, write it, do it, teach it. That whole thing just keeps re-solidifying. And I always learn from them. They learn from me. And I don't want to stop yet. Like I said, I'm not ready to cruise.
To those IT leaders that are looking to hire younger talent, particularly fresh out of college, what can they expect from the newer generation? How do you motivate them? What skill sets should you look for? What gets them ticking and in sync with the organization? What would you say to that?
Yeah, that's a difficult one because, through the process of me hiring people, the pandemic didn't help. A lot of people getting overpaid, a lot of people jumping around didn't help. So you've got a lot of people who with inflated ego thinking that they have the need that you want. And me, I look for a particular personality trait, a particular, I want someone who wants it, who's going to get it, who's going to put in the time. I'm looking for someone like me. And that's hard when I inherited a group of people who were not, people who were the coasters, who were, the social loafing was the norm. We get put on a group project. Well, the group will do it. And, if you have 4 people in the group and all 4 think someone else in the group is going to do it, it's not going to get done. I want people that are be like, I'll just do it myself. Like, well, no, we'll put you on a team and you all get it done. But I think there is a mentality out there with this younger generation that, they've earned it before they worked for it. They'll work hard after you pay them, or, they're not here to work hard because they want that balance and they don't know what the balance is yet, but they think it's earned and already given to them. Now, that's just my 2 cents.
Yeah, that certainly speaks to us. We hire typically a younger audience as well out of Kala, and it's definitely a different mindset. We try to lean on the urge to try new things and encourage that. Like for one, whenever ChatGPT came out, we encouraged everyone to try to find ways to leverage this tool in your job. From day one as an initiative. So I think the new and the fresh is attractive toward the younger audience, and we certainly lean on those types of initiatives to encourage them to grow and develop. At least from our side of the organization, Apkala.
The question I have for our listeners, we always ask about kind of future tech, and it feels like the last 5 or 6 guests we've talked a lot about like generative AI, predictive AI, et cetera. I want to kind of exclude AI. It could be a tool that's sort of around AI and has some components, but from your perspective as an IT leader, what tech are you most excited about over the next 5 years or so that is not specifically AI? I mean, I know it's hard to find one anymore, but what are you most excited about that you feel like it's going to make a big change for you?
That's a good one. I'm not too keen on the cloud. I feel like a lot of people are relying on that for security, thinking it's someone else's device, and they're not realizing that it's not. Maybe it's not tech, but maybe it's more of a process. Is maybe I'm more excited that more people are going to start getting into security and figuring out security. We're going to start seeing a lot of, for that to happen though, we're going to see a lot of bad too. You can't have all the tightening and all the figuring of things out and the good products without bad things happening. So I think we're going to see a lot of stuff. We're going to see a lot of people, like this MGM thing, all the different sides of it coming out. I like that there's information, that, you're going to hear people, I have older relatives like, oh my God, these people hacked that company. And it's like, well, that's not really what happened. They were in the middle of negotiating with them and the company kind of did it to themselves a little bit. So you're going to see a lot of bad practices blamed on, other people and other things. But being that we're in kind of an information age, who knows? I mean, and kind of back to your early stuff, like maybe we get some stuff released and we figure out how to make that paper thin saucer, right?
Yep.
Like some of that technology, some of that no fossil fuel energy, and we all get jet bikes and stuff like that. That'd be nice. Motorcycle in the sky.
There we go. Perfect. I love it. If that's the new tech we're looking forward to, I'm excited.
Yeah, I really don't think a lot about the future in that aspect. I just kind of roll with everything, and I do try to go to a lot of events and conferences and see what's coming out there, and I get excited when I see it. Pipe dreams, I don't really chase that. Let me see what you have done. Let me see what's really coming.
Yeah, I think I couldn't agree more. We're coming up to about the end of the podcast, Matt, and one thing we like to do is ask if you could disseminate a message to the wider tech industry. Could be about some personal advice that you have. It could be about philosophy of going about work. It could be about a lot of things. What would you tell an eager audience looking for advice when it comes to how to be a more effective IT leader?
Definitely believe in yourself. You have to put yourself out there. You have to be your first fan. You have to be the one putting you out there and doing everything for yourself. Know your value. No one's going to do it for you. So you have to definitely do that for yourself and invest in yourself. Keep putting back into you. It's going to come back. And if it doesn't, you still invested in yourself. You put that time in for you. So I definitely always feel like, continue education, keep tinkering with toys and different, little doodads and events, not events, devices, and, go to events, learn those things. To me, it's just putting back, you're going to get back what you put in. You know what I mean? If you're a plant, keep watering yourself, keep out in the sun, keep doing that. Don't expect, I got hired here, they're going to send me to an event. They're going to train me. They're going to do this. They're not going to do that. They don't care. I mean, unless you've got it worked in or you have a manager like me who wants to send you somewhere, you can't always assume that. So do it yourself. Get it done. Find those things that motivate you and keep you going.
I love that. That's great life advice in general, and it could be applied to any team, any individual, any career. I love it. Matt, this has been an awesome episode. Thank you for sharing all of your knowledge. For those listeners out there, what's the easiest way to connect with you?
Wherever you can find me. LinkedIn. I don't really hang out on Facebook. I don't do the TikTok thing that much because you just get sucked down that hole for an hour or three. But no, LinkedIn, email mhuffman@reinders.com. My personal email is mhuffman23@gmail. If anybody wanted to reach out to me, I'm an open book. I'm willing to talk to anybody, help anybody out, do stuff. So all good.
Yeah, we appreciate it. This has been awesome. And you took time out of your day, which we appreciate. And I know our listeners will appreciate it. So thank you, Matt, Keith, another great episode. To all our listeners out there, thank you for joining us again on the IT Matters podcast. Remember to subscribe on your favorite podcast platform. Leave us a review. Hopefully it's 5 stars, although I know our jokes sometimes might bring it a star down. But please leave a good review for us, and we hope you have a great rest of the day and week.
Thanks for listening. The IT Matters podcast is produced by Apkalla, an IT advisory firm that helps businesses navigate the vast and complex IT marketplace. Learn more about Apkalla at opkalla.com.